Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 11th, 2019. Approve the council agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mayor, Council, I don't have any additions or corrections tonight.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Invocations from Faith Lutheran Church. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys? Well, let's pray. Lord God, we give you thanks for our hometown, Hutchinson, and we pray that you would continue to bless it as you have these many years. We thank you for calling forth faithful leaders for our town, and Lord, as they meet tonight, I pray that you would give them blessings and guidance and discernment and continue to use them as you have been for the role that you've called them. We ask all of this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognitions of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? All right, we do have a couple resolutions accepting donations. We have resolution number 15065, resolution accepting cash donation to the Hutchinson Fire Department, and resolution number 15067, resolution accepting cash donations from the Pearl River Snow Pros for the tree purchases for planting along the Loose Line Trail.
Make a motion to accept.
Motion by Steve, second by Dave. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comment, anybody who wants to address the council, please come forward, state your name and address. Alrighty, approval of minutes. We have the workshop of May 28th, 2019, and the regular meeting minutes of May 28th, 2019.
So move. To approve.
Second.
Motion by Dave, second by Steve to approve.
Glad you cleared that.
Any other discussion?
Well, it was a topic, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda, this will be done by one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is approval of change order number 4, letting number 1, project number 18-01, Century Avenue reconstruction, southeast. B is approval of out-of-state travel for Miles Supple to attend the Mid-American Economic Development Council Best Practices Conference, July 17th through the 19th, 2019 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. C is approval of issuing 3-2 malt liquor license to the Knights of Columbus St. Christopher Council on June 28th and 29th, 2019 for the NTPA Power Pole Nationals at the McLeod County Fairgrounds. D is approval of renewing food vendor license to Rafael Ramirez. And E is claims appropriations and contract payments. Is there anything anybody wants pulled off?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Mary to approve the consent agenda. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? carried. Communications and request petitions. We have update and request by River Song Music Festival. Good evening, Pat. How are you?
Gentlemen, little yearly update on,
Mr. May, can you give us your name,
sorry,
sir?
Patrick May, Hutchinson, Minnesota. Just kind of bringing you guys up to speed. We've sent letters to Chief of Police, Mr. Giverson, and just want to bring you up to date. We've got everything lined up with the police department. I brought a handout this morning. I don't know if it was in your packets, but it's just a little letter kind of updating. But, you know, as in the past, we've kind of followed the same thing. We've got our site and security, which I'm in charge of, and we have all our fencing lined up. Joe Nagels, Sergeant Nagel, I believe, is the one we always work with, and he's there for site and security. And this year, we applied for grants and a couple upgrades I just wanted to bring to the council's attention, and that's that we're adding through receiving this grant, we're adding 2 additional upgrades of 250 amp service, which obviously helps us, but also is there for the city to use in whatever they intend to use it for. New backdrop this year, just to keep you kind of appraised of things. We used to have a huge wooden one. This year it's going to be a same type of backdrop that's used in Library Square. And so we'll be putting that up and taking it down after the festival, take care of all of that. All of our electricals handled by a licensed electrician. It's all inspected and approved. Friday morning that will be done, as has been done in the past. Any other questions that you may have? I know, Steve, you had a question in regards to smoking, and I believe our city ordinance is something to the effect that where there's playground equipment, there has to be at least a 25-foot barrier. What we've done is we've marked that off. Again, Sergeant Nagel will be there. We'll keep an eye on it. I'm there the whole weekend. We'll keep an eye on that and to mark it so that at least there are, you know, no smoking within 25 feet of that designated playground area. I have a little map that actually Betsy did up for me. It's very tiny, but I can hand it around. So we have measured it out so that you can see it. And if there's any other questions, from the council, but just, it looks to be, all we're praying for is good weather.
Yeah, can you give us a lineup?
You know what,
Performers?
Betsy, do you have it? I don't have the lineup with, the headliners will be, on Friday night, it is the Amazing Armadillos. On Saturday night, it is Fastball, you know it better. Thanks, Matt. Matt's coming, I hope, because he knows the lineup. And then we throw in a few local, I know that Four on the Floor, which used to have a local person playing it, I don't know if they still do or not, but it's a great lineup. There's things for the kids, as we've done in the past. We have an area where there's just games for the kids, and again, the smoking thing, we'll keep in touch with that and everything, but it'll be, it's always a good time. The vendors, you know, any kind of food you'd like. Any other questions, or?
Look forward to it.
Yeah, it's a good time. We've gone to, last year we went to metal fencing, which really works better than the, we used to have like the flexible, orange stuff. Thank you, Mary. And we've gone to the metal. It's just costs us a little more, but I think safety-wise, it's a lot easier for us to patrol and keep people where they
And
should
the
be.
dates again, Pat?
12th and 13th, Friday the 12th, Saturday the 13th.
And times?
On Friday, it starts at 5 o'clock, and on Saturday, I believe our first one rolls off at 12?
Yeah, gates open.
Noon. Yes, gates open at 11 and open at 4 on Friday. So, and we have lighting in the parking lot, that's all striped out. Kind of been doing this quite a few years, so we try to keep things that working and try to change the things to better it every year.
Still have the bike parking like
Bike
we've
parking,
had
yep,
before.
yeah, there's right by the gates, and we usually get quite a few, like upwards of 80 bicycles, depending on, sometimes 120, I think one year we hit, so I mean, people use the system there. We kind of do shut down the bike path going through, simply because, but we put up signs so that they're fully aware of that and they can get around it and get to the actual site itself.
So they can get around on the north side of the park, correct?
Yes, yep, and it's, yeah, that's probably been our biggest thing. We kind of have to police that because people like to kind of sneak by that one, but we're just hoping that maybe it dries out a little bit between then and now and then.
All right,
In front
sounds
of
good.
the council for consideration, obviously, the update, but there's also a request for amplified music in the park, amplified music until midnight, and the sale consumption of alcohol within the park. So that's all a part of what's being asked of the council to approve tonight as well.
I believe you have our application and our insurance papers there. Hopefully they were in the packet.
I'd make a motion to approve the requests.
I'll second it. Motion by Chad, second by myself. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, council. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have review of Campbell and Otter Lake Restoration Project final report. Mr. Paulson.
Yeah, I'll kick this off quickly, Mayor, and then hand it over to John, obviously. First and foremost, I want to thank WSB and their staff in this effort, and John will get into the details of it, but this was definitely a worthy effort as we continue to explore and examine the possibilities and feasibilities of improving our water bodies, specifically Otter Lake and Campbell Lake within our community. So this is another study effort that really got into the potential delivery of improvement projects and associated funding that really played off of a previous effort by Bar Engineering that really was data gathering and such, which was in the 600 some, almost 700 page document. Yeah, however many, but yeah, there's a lot of legwork behind this, and yeah, thanks to WSB, this was a worthy effort on their part, and thanks to our technical advisory panel, that's noted in the information within your packet who was involved on that front. So with that, John?
Thank you, Kent. Good evening, council, Mr. Mayor. As Kent had noted, this is kind of a culmination of all the efforts that we've been implementing over the recent years to kind of get to this point. It's kind of been a natural progression towards identifying not just projects, but also now we're at a point where we're starting to look at funding mechanisms potentially to pursue for a wide variety of these projects. And ultimately, kind of the nature, I guess the mission statement of kind of what we're trying to achieve is to enhance and restore the lakes within our community. That's achieved through a number of different means and methods, through restoration activities within the basin, also outside within the watershed as well. So this project ultimately identifies not just the things we've done in the past, the historical data, it also pulls in information relative to other work that's been done within the watershed by other entities, the Watershed Restoration Plan, TMDLs, nesting bird studies, things that have been done within the entire Crow area. So yeah, that's why this document's so gigantic, in that it looks at a wide variety of different resources that are available, studies, reports that have been done in the past, both by the city and outside the city. And then that's also why it's reflected within our technical advisory panel. There's a wide variety of people represented within that as well, from city to residents to the DNR, McLeod Soil and Water Conservation District, the Corps of Engineers. So like I said, it was really diverse, covering a wide range of different topics and things. And ultimately, what you end up seeing is exactly what I noted, is just a whole wide variety of things that represent the Crow, from wildlife habitat, water quality, vegetation, a mixture of a lot of different things. What was provided within the packet was, I think, a 12-page document, which is kind of an executive summary. It identifies a variety of different best management practices, things that can be done within an upgrading of the water, upgrading of the lake, to improve water quality, to improve habitat. And that also identifies a number of different things as well, from costs to potential funding sources to entities that would be eligible to pursue those different funding sources. And anything from shoreline restorations to wetland restorations, habitat improvements, buffers within wetlands upgrading as well. Anything and everything that we could think of through that technical advisory panel and the resources that we had. That's why we had such a diverse set of people. There's things that people focus on outside the city of we're used to dealing with stormwater ponds and rain gardens and pipes within our community, whereas the Soil and Water District, as an example, is used to dealing with sedimentation basins on upland, grass waterways, tiered agriculture, that kind of thing. DNR is used to working within the water bodies themselves for habitat restoration, shoreline, those types of things. So it represents a wide variety of different expertise and knowledge that's relative locally within the community, within the watershed, and then also it pulls in kind of the wider perspective from a funding standpoint at the local, state, and federal level as well. And that includes McLeod Soil and Water funding, state grant funding through, be it Lessard SAMS, Clean Water Legacy Land Act, also right up to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer funding as well, potentially. So, like I said, wide range of different things that we touched on as part of the study in this evaluation. Within the actual 12 pages that you see there, it identifies a summary of projects, like I said, costs related to different improvements within the watershed, upgrading the watershed, kind of a description of those tasks. We try to simplify this. Like I said, there was multiple discussions through a number of different technical advisory panel meetings, and then we kind of try to boil it down to into a document that's legible, something that's easy to read, minus the 780 pages after the first 12. Some of those, if you really want to get into the details and the weeds, pardon the pun, there's tons of information in there that you can definitely use to help understand exactly what is happening from a biological, chemical, habitat, wildlife standpoint. There's, like I said, a wide variety of things that it touches on.
John, just to add to that.
Yep.
The council did receive the full report through a separate email. Obviously, we're not going to put 800 pages in your council packet, but that is available to the public as well, if they want to see that, so.
Yeah, it's even worth noting too, that original document, as you can imagine, that many pages, it was 170 megabytes. We had to boil it down to like 44 megabytes was as small as we could possibly get it. So, yeah, it's interesting when you start dealing with that many different resources in one document. Provides a little background history too, references the different documents that were used within this evaluation. As I noted, many of those on the bottom of page 4 there. Collection, not just collecting and pulling them together, but actually looking into those, reviewing them to understand, are there things that align with what we're trying to achieve? In pretty much every one of those there is. Like I said, if it's habitat, restoration, water quality, these things are wide-reaching and fully encompassing. So that's why those documents were included, because there is some relative value to having those included within that. Establishment of the technical advisory panel was a huge component of this, identifying those partners, those resources that we can utilize locally at the local state level. Like I said, we even had U.S. Army Corps of Engineer, Fish and Wildlife involved as well. Moving forward, we would continue to plan to utilize those resources to build on those partnerships and those relationships moving forward. It's a critical component to kind of the next steps, as I'll touch on here briefly. Preliminary plan to next steps kind of identifies some of those things as well. Within the project summary, priority grant applications on pages 7, 8. It starts to lay out exactly who's eligible, ultimately what do these things achieve. If we pursue priority project number 1 or 2 or 3, what are the tasks, what are the costs? And mind you, these are not all exhaustive, but they're not all inclusive either, in the sense that we're not committed to doing these things, but we're not committed to or limited to just doing these things either. There's going to be other opportunities that may present themselves, other things that we learn as we're going through future steps of the process as well. Might be opportunities that are timely that we can commit to, tying and building onto one project that we may not have necessarily identified in here earlier as part of this effort. So there may be other things that pop up, I guess, ultimately is what we're trying to achieve.
And you don't have to follow the order, just,
Correct.
Again, there's opportunities that might fit something better, so.
Absolutely, yep. And yeah, we'll continue to reach out to others too within our networks as well, outside of the effort and the TAP that we've included as part of this effort. As an example, we had some conversations with the city engineer from the city of Albert Lea last week, talking about the efforts that they have going on down there, where they're identifying $22.5 million for improvements within their basin, within their community as well. They're achieving it in kind of a different way than what we're looking at, but those conversations will continue to evolve and meld as we, reach out, as we become familiar with what others are doing and they start hearing what we're trying to achieve as well. We're going to find some commonality, and we'll certainly, as the opportunities present themselves, we're going to try to, identify those opportunities and so build on those successes that they've also had, and likewise learn from the mistakes as well. So yeah, like I said, there's a huge price tag associated with this. Isn't something that's going to be done in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I mean, this is something that's going to be long-ranging. We've done a lot to date so far. That's definitely worth noting. From a stormwater quality treatment standpoint, regional ponding, that's something that we've made a huge investment within our community to address not only flooding, but also water quality improvements. The investments we've put within our storm sewer system itself, some of that carries over too with what we've done within our water and sewer facilities as well. From a water quality standpoint, permitting, regulations, those types of things will also compound and build onto this as well and kind of drive some of these things in certain directions. But ultimately, when it comes down to implementing things on the ground, things within the watershed, within the basin, it's going to come down to funding. And there are a ton of different funding resources that are available, but that stuff takes time to not just identify, to develop the project, to pursue those funding, and ultimately try to implement those things on the ground as well. And that's ultimately kind of the background. Ultimately, what we try to achieve as a final goal with this is to push this to a point where at least we have an idea what the big scary number is, and now we're at a place where we can start to chunk off pieces of it that are manageable. As, like I said, funding becomes available, opportunities present themselves, and we'll continue to work not just as staff with the TAP, with WSB. WSB is currently in the process of preparing and providing another proposal to look at next steps, which would include looking at some additional testing within the watershed, within the basin itself, to identify things such as phosphorus resuspension or release. That's a critical component that could definitely impact our wastewater treatment facility. There might be opportunities for potential trading in the future for meeting our wastewater treatment plant phosphorus limitations as well. So that's something we will be part of that proposal. Likewise, too, another big step before you ever do any type of sediment removal within the basin is looking at implementing or doing an environmental assessment worksheet. That includes lots of technical information as well, sampling, working with the PCA, the DNR, Board of Water Soil Resources, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, a wide variety of different science and technical types of evaluations to determine what type of environmental impacts doing those types of things can have, and then also to identify what are the things that you can implement on the ground to reduce the risks associated with the efforts that you're trying to implement. And then ultimately, I think it kind of comes down to the last page of the 12 pages that I provided. That is just kind of a snapshot, 10,000 foot view of some of the things locally, immediately around the city of Hutchinson that could be implemented. One thing definitely worth noting is there are going to be projects that will occur on private property over time. That doesn't necessarily mean that the city is going to pay for that. We'll work with local partners to try to encourage those things, market outreach, and identify to say, hey, there's opportunity here. You have fallow land that you're not going to farm anymore. Potentially, let's look at putting it in a CRP. However, we can work with either Soil and Water Conservation District, the county, any of those different partners, like I said, identified as part of that TAP. If there's things we can do to help encourage those things to move them along, either it might just be from a support, might be through letters of support, other funding support, things like that, that we might be able to do internally within our own system, but also to help support the things that are happening around us. That's a huge part of this, because there's definitely limitations that the city have that, we can't necessarily reach outside our boundaries, but there's definitely things that we can do just from a support standpoint and trying to help people encourage these types of activities to be implemented on the ground. And whatever we can do to help do that and achieve that goes a long ways towards the efforts that we implement. As I noted earlier, we've implemented things as part of our stormwater program, from regional ponding and implementation within our infrastructure. It's also saying, hey, we can do this, we can do these things locally. We can also say, it makes a huge difference. Look what we've accomplished, you can do it as well. And sometimes that's all it takes, is to give people that nudge to get that ball rolling in the right direction. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Like I said, at this point in time, we're waiting for some more proposal information from WSB to look at kind of the next steps, what some of that might entail, look at identifying, what are those top priorities as well. Like I said, we're kind of at a point where beginning to evaluate an environmental assessment worksheet, what it would cost to prepare something like that, ultimately what the needs are to start implementing or pursuing some of these larger grant programs as well. There's going to be limitations as far as, not so much limitations, but requirements associated with those different grant applications as well. And with some of those, EAW might be part of that. So that'll be part of the next steps in the process as well.
And just to add a couple of things, we did put in a bonding request earlier in the legislative session regarding some of this. I know we've had communication the last couple of days. We're attempt to try to do something again with the governor there. He's requesting some bonding possibilities, and so we're going to try to put some efforts in on that. So we've already kind of started working this plan a little bit. I think for those of us that sat on the committee, you realize that there's a lot that goes into this, and I think probably there's a lot more than we ever thought. You know, it's quite often we hear from users and residents, well, just go in and do X, Y, and Z. And you realize awfully quick that, especially without this document, we probably weren't going to get anywhere with a lot of, and we've also started building those partnerships with those groups that have funding or a resource to get funding for us. So it was a good experience. So.
And likewise, to add on that, Matt, is the regulatory relationships as well. If the DNR, as an example, knows you've done time and implemented, efforts and expended resources to evaluate these things to better understand, not just why do we want to do it, what are the benefits of doing it, but also what are the drawbacks, what are the obstacles associated, what are the risks associated with all those things are just as important as to know that, understand that, and at least have, like I said, a 10,000-foot view or understanding of what that might mean. And then you can always do additional evaluation and analysis down the road to, I guess, help push that along or to help make that happen. But having that understanding locally initially is a huge part of pursuing those grant funding opportunities that exist out there, to know that, so that they know you're committed to it, you're serious about it, the city's vested in it. It isn't something that just came up overnight, let's make it happen. Like I said, we've been implementing $500,000, $750,000 regional drainage systems, ponds, treatment mechanisms, best management practices for decades. And it's before my time being at the city as well. I mean, that's a long-term investment that the city has made. And I think that's reflected in this document. And I think it's moving forward. We're going to continue to say, this isn't just something that just came up overnight. This is a commitment that the city has had for a long period of time. And this is a natural step.
Knowing that this is, kind of a longer process, and some of these funding sources, it might be advantageous to have a local contribution of some kind. Some require a match, but, would it be beneficial to set aside some funds, like from the Community Improvement Fund, possibly, like we did with the police department, to say these are funds that we're going to kind of earmark, for this river basin project as we go forward? Asking.
From a staff's perspective, I would say yes, that definitely helps us when we're, going to our legislature, when we're trying to work with this group and that group to, come up with funding requests. And if that question gets raised, well, what's the city going to match? A lot of these things, as we find out, you're getting an email on a Friday saying, hey, you got 2 weeks to try to get us something. And
Or there's a
5 days.
hearing in 2 days, you gotta come down here and.
And so if you've got a little bit of flexibility to work with some, that's obviously beneficial.
I definitely think it's always good to show that we have some skin in the game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I did,
Yeah.
Representative Erdahl sponsored a bonding bill, and both in the House, and Representative Gruenhagen too, and then Senator Newman did a companion bill in the Senate. But again, Representative Erdahl gave us a heads up that they're going to be having this hearing, and so it did go down. We had the bonding request of $4 million, I believe, is for that, 4.5, and that was the question. was, well, is the city contributing anything to this? And at that point, we weren't, but we kind of fell back on the investments that we've made on the stormwater ponds already. But again, everybody else had real dollars that they're, matching with it. So again, I think having some money available for different projects, pieces going forward would be helpful, so.
What kind of percentage did you see, Steve, of it being successful? Like how much money were communities bringing to the table?
I wouldn't want to guess,
Sure.
but I think having something for sure.
There is some information within this document as well that identifies some of that, relative to certain grant programs of certain match contribution requirements. Some don't. Even the ones that don't, it benefits probably during the scoring process or the prioritization of the projects if you do. So all of those are considerations as well. Just because they require a 25% match doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, if you had a 50-50, it'd probably definitely improve your chances. But ultimately, that comes down to what's your ability and what's, how many
look at-
resources can you contribute to it.
Look at page 9 of the report. It talks about matches, and maximum amounts, and it's a snapshot.
But even if it, like John said, even if it doesn't require a match, it's definitely part of the scoring that we've seen that other stuff too.
State
so.
bonding dollars typically don't require any matching funds, but like same thing, they're asking you that question at a hearing, even though they don't require it, just because someone else might be asking the same question and they got money at the table or more skin in the game.
I think almost the bigger thing that could put you in a more favorable light is how deliverable the project is. And
That's definitely part of it.
that cities making investments in the plans and the engineering efforts, and we've taken, I think, 2 nice steps here with the BAR study and now the WSB study. But it's really now, and we'll rely on WSB and look at specific funding opportunities. The big prize is bonding dollars. And that's what we heard from Champlin, that's what we heard from Albert Lee. But you have to put yourself in a position to show that you have a project that's been developed and is ready to deliver. And that could be a fairly substantial investment into developing plans on the front end. And I think that goes a long ways, whether it's projects like this or roads and bridges for that matter, is communities making that investment up front to show, well, we're just not looking for a handout. We actually put some money into firmly understanding what we're asking for. You're just not asking for $4 million based on a very preliminary, these are very preliminary dollars. That's the other thing I want to stress. There's not a lot of design and effort put into these scoping amounts here. So we're far from that. But I think what you can paint a better picture when you come to a legislator and a committee that, hey, we developed this plan. We have a good understanding what this is going to cost.
Well, I think that even when John mentioned all we've done with the ponds and, to try to hold back some of the sentiment that's going into our river,
Yep.
that kind of shows that we are interested in, getting this done.
Absolutely.
But like Champlin put hundreds of thousands of dollars into their design to ultimately pursue the funding sources on the front end, and I think you have a better story to tell when you firmly understand the scope of what you're asking for. So I think that's really the next step here. Identify the grant, the funding opportunities, and then look to where we put our resources to developing projects so we can paint a better picture to legislators that we understand what we're asking for, and other funding groups, agencies.
And that's why I referenced that environmental assessment worksheet or EAW. That's a huge part of that. To be able to, like I said, pursue any type of forebay or sediment removal, that's a must. To be able to have that box checked already is a huge step in the right direction. Granted, that's a commitment. Once again, just because maybe if you don't have a large matching contribution, I guess to Kent's point, is if you have the EAW done, you have some preliminary plans developed, that thing's almost shovel ready if you're at 50 or 75% plans. I mean, you might be able to, with a little bit of more effort, that goes a long ways to know that you're committed, you're gonna plan on doing something. It's just not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So that goes a long way as well.
You know, and Steve, to go back to even your original question about setting aside funding, I think it's really, what's the desire of the council? Because we can look at a couple different occasions where, you know, we set money aside for the tree disease. And then when we're ready to address some of that, we'll use that money out of that. Otherwise, it's as projects come up, come to request. I mean, I think the easiest thing for us to go, if we had a pot of money that says $300,000 that's set aside, and we go, okay, well, this is a $100,000 study, well, let's go to the council and ask if we can use $100,000 of that $300,000 that's set aside. I mean, all of that helps us, but at the end of the day, it's really whatever the desire and comfortable level of, you know, the council is, because even if you set aside a pool of money, we're still gonna have to come and get approval from the council before it gets used, so.
I know when we had the hospital money, again, we put 3 million of that towards the PD. So there's still 3 approximately, and this was one project I thought of, you know, some of that money could go to, because you can see the numbers and what it's gonna take, but, you know, and Kent, you talk about the plans, which again, I agree that'll be important as part of that, but I would suggest, just for discussion later on, but maybe that a $500,000 number right now, because the plans could come out of that, and then there'll be some other money available for some of these matches, you know, to go forward, and at least it's a place to start, and money's gonna have a lot of different demands and requests out there.
Some of these funding opportunities, your design effort can be reimbursed basically once you deliver the project. That's our understanding to some degree with respect to the bonding dollars, you know, talking to WSB staff. So you just got to make that commitment up front, and, you know, delivering a project's never a given when you make that commitment. But I draw the comparison to like the 212 gaps in Carver County, the gaps to the west of Cologne. Really, they weren't willing to make the commitment to develop that project and do all the engineering and basically get it to a final design. There would have been no hope for that project to be delivered, but there was no guarantee they were ever going to get that return back. Well, there still isn't, I guess, but they're getting there on these gaps.
Even smaller projects like the Dakota, what the county's done with that, and that all helps.
Yeah, you take on that risk, and like you say, Steve, it's nice to realize there's some dollars available to take on that effort on the front end, because I think from staff standpoint, it does get to be a struggle. You know, we're taking on that risk, and where those dollars come from in the meantime, on certain fronts, without the project ultimately being a certainty.
Well, you want to make that a motion,
Well,
Steve? or-
no, we don't have it on as an action, but I think that at least gives staff some direction. You know, I think we did a resolution when it came to the earmarking the PD money, and so we would do it. That's just something we bring forward at a future meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I think it's a
Comfortable?
good idea to set some money aside for that project. Do it now, you know?
This is really, I almost hate to use it because you talk about legacy funds, but it is kind of a legacy project because, you know, of the waterway and the value of it to the community and how important that is. The one thing, you know, as much as the plan is, it's going to take legwork to establish relationships at the legislature, not with just our locals who all thought this is a great project, but like the bonding chairs and some of the key legislators, because like this hearing was a prime example. You had 5 minutes. You can barely introduce, and then a project like what we're talking about. So, but having that study, that's really the key to help start having those conversations.
Well, and to add to that too, you know, it's also gonna be important for us to build those relationships locally with landowners.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this, there's opportunities for us to partner with them, or just simply opportunities for them to make, some of these improvements as well.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, John. Second reading and adoption of ordinance number 19-801, ordinance suspending enforcement of section 92.018 of the city code pertaining to hours of construction during the Fifth Avenue South reconstruction project.
Yes, again, just simply extending our construction working hours from 9 AM to 7 AM on weekends, primarily Saturdays, is what we anticipate on the Fifth Avenue reconstruction project.
I'd make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Have some questions for the 2019 National Citizen Survey.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, you may recall I introduced this about a month ago and asked you guys to start thinking about questions that you'd like to see added into the survey. This is the National Citizen Survey that we do once every 4 years. As I noted at that time, there's 3 custom questions that we get to include in the survey. Those are, I think, questions 14, 15, and 16. And I included in your council packet, and I did put an update on your desk because I did have some feedback, but these were questions that, or these topics that were sent forward to me mainly from the council and some from staff on potential questions that we'd like to see asked. Some of it, there's been some different language that's been proposed. Quite frankly, it's really up to the council to decide on, you know, what are 3 areas or a couple areas that you're looking to get feedback from the council. And we've talked about everything from our sales tax to even what we just had a discussion on in regards to the Lakes River Basin study, to more street infrastructure funding. You know, we've talked about childcare, and we've talked about even affordable housing and workforce. And so I've tried to get a variety of different questions out there that staff put together. Then I even asked NCS to get, you know, what are some other examples that are out there that cities have used to ask, and that was the one additional handout that was given to you. And so really it's back to you guys I'm looking for they're kind of waiting for us to get us their 3 custom questions. And then they'll start delivering the survey. And so kind of looking for direction from you guys on what you'd like to see included. One thing I was going to touch on that I'm somewhat excited for is that NCS has partnered with a company called Polco that I've actually had some preliminary discussions with. And they're looking at, Polco does more of a daily, weekly, monthly polling of your citizens, where it's more of an online application to where we can ask time of day questions or the hot topic issues on our website. And so I'm looking at potentially in future years to incorporate that so let's say when we were talking about the chicken ordinance, we could put a question out to our public during that month asking for feedback, or there's a street project, or
Sorry, is that a scientific approach, or does it get to be more like the leaders' online poll?
And that's part of what. And that's part of what I'm still kind of looking at, because you're right. I mean, it's
Not that there's not value there. There certainly is.
But some of what I've seen, you can get it down to where they'll tell you these are the responses for this block. You know, so when you talk about a specific, and so that's some of what I'm still kind of evaluating. So as, you know, we talk about, you know, one of the conversations is, well, does affordable housing, does childcare need to be a whole separate questionnaire? I mean, that's, you know, those are some of the things that we're looking at. bring on in the future. But really, like I said, we're down to designing 3 custom questions that we're looking to include out with the public.
Well, I thought number 5 and number 6, the housing part, we had the workshop today, and then childcare, we've talked about too before, where those could really be separate surveys where you could ask half a dozen questions on that topic to get a better understanding of that. So when I looked at it, I thought, maybe do away with those. The river one, again, I kind of wonder about is there enough context or background there, especially when you see $24 million and,
Well, that being said, I mean, it is gonna be a big enchilada hanging out there for people, what I mean? So, I mean, everybody can probably say, well, yeah, I want the river cleaned up, but,
But I don't want to pay for it.
right, I think that's where a lot of people are, where they would love for it to be cleaned up, but,
Yeah, but we don't even really have the full thing yet, the plan and
Right.
the funding opportunities that, so I just think it's a little premature right now, that's all. But,
but on the childcare one too, I'm not sure what as a council are we gonna do to help fix that problem, and I think there's daycare available for everybody but infants, I think that's where the big one is, because taking care of infants isn't a great part of that job, but I mean, I've run in that circle, obviously, because I have kids that are that age, but it seems like my friends have a tough time finding places for infants, but not for other kids, so,
Well, because there's only can be so many
right.
infants, so.
What I'm saying is, I don't know if we want to
Right.
burn a question on here, because I don't know what we're gonna do, even if it comes back saying, hey, there's nowhere to park an infant.
Yeah, what are we going to do?
We're not gonna probably have a city-funded daycare center for infants, so,
but the legislature has been looking at different programs and, to provide funding, so, that said, I agree that just that one, but to understand the problem, if there is a problem or what the problem is, then
And I think that's
maybe there's opportunities.
probably more of an in-depth question. I think getting back to Steve's initial point, I know in outstate Minnesota, there's a huge daycare crisis. I'm not saying there isn't one in town, we're just, from a staff standpoint, we're not hearing that. And so that's really, I think, points to, there probably needs to be 4 or 5 questions that are asked on the childcare to really try to get to the heart of that in town here.
So what I like the sales tax one, just because, we're gonna have the park master plan, and especially from the recreation facility standpoint, it just helps with some of the potential planning that goes forward, what we might be able to do. I did, the 1A, I think, maybe clarifies it a little bit more, where, in number 1, it says we're considering extending it, which makes it sound like it's our decision, versus in 1A, it says this will still be voted on and needs legislative approval, and it will still sunset.
And I think that it is, it should be voted on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it has to be.
It's the state law,
it
so-
should be, and yeah, it should be stated in there, otherwise they're going to think we're just going ahead with it.
Right. And then number 2, kind of with the street repair, that was something I had suggested before. It's based on past survey results, like our street repairs aren't the best, so 2A just reworks that a little bit. It's for
Matt, could you refresh our memory? Did you say that other cities do get positive feedback on their streets, or is this one of these deals where everybody complains
Well-
about their streets no matter where they live?
So the survey And this is always a disclaimer, the survey is meant to read the perception of the community that you are giving the survey to. And now our survey is benchmarked against other communities in the nation that take the National Citizen Survey. And now I believe the last two, our perception rates on the low end of the other communities that take the survey. I know Steve had asked, and I had shared some, we can, of course, it's more money, you can end up regionalizing that, and so you know, if we want to, we can probably get, what's the responses of most cities in Minnesota, the upper Midwest. But for those that we are compared to against the United States, we rate on the low end of a perception of what people view our street repair is like.
I wish every city had the exact same pavement management system that we do, because then you could just check it.
Well, you know, and this is probably getting back to, you know, we've asked these questions every 4 years, and it gives us some feedback, but we probably then need to follow up with some more, you know, when I think about that maintenance question, we should probably follow up the next year with 3 or 4 questions and that say, okay, what exactly? Or you have workshops, or you have open houses, what exactly is the city falling behind on? You know, because a lot of times you can ask, what did they tell you, Gary? Well, the mall parking lot.
Yep.
Right.
You know, so, but that's the people that talk to us, but is there, you know, is those private properties getting, you know, that's the part we don't really know.
Or every time we do a street project and the people that live on that street, well, I don't want my road redone, because I don't want to pay
Yeah,
for
we
it.
hear that also, exactly. I think it's
You
a
know.
very, like Matt's alluding to, it's a very elementary perception. That's,
Yeah, that's what
they
I'm
don't
trying to get
understand
at.
the system,
Yeah.
nature, public, private. Yeah, we don't, I don't, obviously, I'm a bit partisan here, but we do not have a street maintenance problem in this community.
Plus
Just
they-
drive around and go to other communities.
Well, you drive to smaller towns, you know, like I go to Crosby and Ironton once in a while, you know, go mountain biking, and like, the roads are absolute crap, you know?
But not even smaller communities. Go to larger communities and get off of the county
Yeah.
trunk highway systems. Go to St.
terrible.
Cloud.
Or go to Duluth.
You go to the community, hey, I always bring it up, Waconia, if you want to see a community with the street maintenance issue, you know, I see it every day. It's not even.
But that, we should really be using this information. Okay, do we need to do a better job of, hey, do you know that we have a payment management program where we go out and we analyze every single one of our streets? And they're graded, and then, you know, I mean, that's probably, you know, some of the more in-depth questions that we need to do.
It's education more than anything, I think, too. You know, like,
Yeah.
you do, you go out and you assess that street and what needs to be done to it. A lot of people don't know that.
Yep. And we report that every year, the pavement management program report. So I think we're doing our part, but
They're
one of
not
those
listening.
perception issues, you ask the question, you might not get the answer you want. You know, no matter how much you educate or seek to have people understand.
But the response that we're getting in our survey is on the low end of those that are being reported. So that's something that we're attempting to address.
And that's why I kind of like the idea of asking a question, just to give a little background of what we are doing. We didn't talk about pavement management program. That could work in there, but then, okay, you know, this is what we're already spending, you know. Question 3, you know, Matt had $1 million in there. You know, I just thought, well, why not give a choice of the amount? You know, it's $1 million, this is what it would cost. How about 500,000? 250? You know, is there a desire for anything? Or,
I think it's been proven. I think be careful what you ask for again, because people like good streets, and you know that might be the response you get. Now that's been proven out when things have been taken to referendums at, you know, at the state level, and you know other communities have sales taxes that have been voter approved that they dedicate to street maintenance and improvements. So, yeah, I'd be curious if you go this route, what the response will be, especially from the funding standpoint.
Which, I mean, if people ask for it, I have no problem green lighting it, you know, but it'll just be interesting to see what people say.
Especially since we put the numbers on the value, you know, like of a,
Well, I think it'd be also be interesting, like, say we
$160,000
do an extra $1 million of street work, do people even notice, or do they still, you know, I mean,
It still doesn't go that far.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's the other issue that's evolving, and it's, as we speak, is $1 million doesn't go as far as
No.
$1 million used to go, and, you know, we've seen that, you know, it's cost us $2.5 million to address Fifth Avenue this year. We're gonna see potentially a $2 million project on South Grade Road, and John and I have been talking even from a maintenance standpoint, prices are going up, and they might be going up drastically, and, you know, the west side of the metro, which is always kind of a precursor of what's gonna happen out here, they're seeing bids on maintenance efforts and projects 20-40% higher than estimates right now, yeah, this spring, so. And the counties saw some of those dynamics early on, even out here, outstate. So,
So you're looking
Yeah, like I
for,
said, I think it's important for us to remember too, this is meant to give you guys some feedback, and then, like I said, I don't think we've done the best job of them going back and trying to get more data.
I've actually thought, you know, we're talked about coffees with the council or something. Well, when we get these survey results back, that's a question that kind of get dinged on or come back lower. Well, maybe that's the topic of conversation. So instead of having it more open-ended, it's kind of has a focus to it.
Yeah, let's talk about street maintenance.
So what do you,
looking
just
for
people
three.
get back to you, or?
Well,
you need-
yeah, there's two ways. I mean, we have it on their action items, so if you want more time to think about it, then I'd ask you to table it to our next meeting, where I would ask that we, at the very least, try to do it this month, because, like I said, they're ready to go. They're waiting on us to give them their custom questions, and so if you'd like some more time to think about it, that's fine. You know, what I heard was, you know, 1A, 2A, and probably a 3, on the handout that I gave to you.
It's kind of what I
Or,
got checked off.
Like I said,
so-
you know, so if you're comfortable with that, is to ask you to motion to that. Otherwise, if you want more time to think about it.
Actually, I think we're okay with question 1A, 2A, and 3, I would say. Council, agree?
Agreed.
I agree.
Need I would ask a motion that those questions get included as the custom questions for the city.
Make a motion for those three.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Mary to give questions 1A, 2A, and 3. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 15068, resolution entering into a MnDOT, Minnesota MnDOT agreement 1033863, traffic signal at intersection of Truck Highway 15 and South Grade Road.
Yes. What you have in front of you is a rather lengthy agreement, and it's tied, like you said, Mayor, to the Highway 15 South Grade Road signal system. This is basically the agreement that allocates our receipt of the local project or local partnership projects MnDOT grant in the amount of $141,000. There's some moving parts from a financial standpoint. I'll just make note of quick. The maximum state contribution is $141,000, albeit based on the current cost estimates, the city would be eligible for almost $142,000. Just by coincidence, more than anything, those dollars did align. But the state's cost participation is not being driven by the the ultimate cost of the project. These numbers will be revised based on the ultimate bid prices. But their contribution is capped by the grant. So I just want to make note of that. So that might, their ultimate, number that could have come our way or not come our direction, basically it's not going to exceed 141,000. From the city standpoint, our cost participation will be paying for basically half of the new control cabinet out there that's extremely outdated, to the tune of $26,630, give or take. So we get 141, we have to pay 27. So at the end of the day, we're a little bit ahead. I think we deliver an improvement. This agreement basically goes away if the project isn't delivered. So, I mean, the state wanted to get this paperwork done more from the grant standpoint to get the wheels turning on making that allocation to us.
It's really tied to the South Grade project. I mean, because we could still, there's that alignment piece on the east side, that's where the signal still kind of comes in too, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, basically the signal system, the new signal system ties to all the realignment of the intersection
Right.
from the east-west orientation. So, yeah, I think it's another discussion, maybe the dollar, if the project isn't delivered and we're gonna leave things status quo out there, basically do nothing from an alignment corridor standpoint, like we've developed up to this point and plan to go up for bids here in the near future. Maybe we come back to the table with the state and we say, well, at the very least, can we improve the signal system and the functionality of it based on the existing configuration? And that really begs the question, is that money well spent, I guess, or not? But hopefully we deliver this as part of the overall South Grade Road Corridor Improvements Project. Yeah, that's it on my end. So yeah, recommend approving this agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Setting council workshop on June 25th, 2019 at 4 PM to review master park plan.
Yep, Mayor and Council, we're getting set to deliver the final park plan to you, and so I'd like to have a workshop on that before your next council meeting. I hope to have that draft out to you a good week, maybe even two, prior to us having that workshop, so, well, not two anymore, but at least a good week, so.
Well, it could be two.
Yeah.
Well, kind of.
Make a motion to set that meeting.
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to set that workshop. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of communications to the library board.
Mayor and council, we had a discussion on this at our last council meeting, and I think it was brought up at the end of the meeting regarding just at least one question or a couple questions that have come forward from the library board, and so the council had asked for me to at least draft a letter for you guys to consider to send off to the library board that puts together, I guess, what you guys feel is the role of the library board. So I did my best to try to do that for you, and I've got that included for your consideration. If you're comfortable with this, this is what passed on to the library board, and it gives them the option if they'd still like to set a meeting, we would do that with them.
I think it looks good.
I think that
Think
was
it's-
helpful.
It's well put together. I'll make a,
Gives a little background, like,
right.
I did some research to find out when
When the stuff took
when that
place.
stuff kind of, well, as best as I could anyways, based off of the records that we have. We're into some.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
second. Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to approve the letter to the library board. Clear discussion? All in favor?
So, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I guess the one thing I was wondering about was, the Pioneer land, and we don't really seem to get much feedback that way, from what's going on there, and, do you ever see minutes from their meetings, Mary, or maybe
No,
could
but the
those
person who attends those Pioneer Land meetings, who is, our representative from Hutchinson, comes back to the library board and reports what they have learned after they've attended.
there maybe be a memo in the council or the minutes from their board meetings, ask that those get included, or that way understand that better. And I know, Matt, you got in here about the funding request part of it. but-
Yeah, I'll say some of this, we haven't, neither one of the sides, at least since I've been here, really
Right.
done, even though I would say that's probably some of the questions. So some of
Usually-
that's probably, from the council's perspective, we should probably be doing a better job of asking
Yeah.
the library board, and, in some cases, they should maybe be doing a better job of being proactive.
And I think the representative, that comes back and speaks with us at our meetings is very informative, But they certainly could provide more information on the board, on the Pioneer.
We just, a copy of their minutes in our packet, like the board and commissions, that way at least we'd have a start, and it's not a lot for our representative to make up something special,
Right.
and then go from there. Knowing what their minutes look like, if they're
Right,
one or
right.
2 pages long. or- We still, does Katie work with Winstead, or Winstead has their own librarian now?
They
I think
do,
Mary
but
was doing that.
I think she still does some things with them. She also does things with the library in Glencoe, I mean, they all kind of work together to set up programs and do things together.
Any other discussion? Call a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. We have Hutchinson Economic Development Authority Board minutes from February and March 2019. Hutchinson Utilities Commission minutes from April 24th, 2019. Chief Gifferson, you have anything for us tonight?
Sir,
John, you have anything else?
weed notices are fast and furious out there, so they are getting cut.
All right. Kent?
Couple things, mosquitoes and gnats for that matter. Yeah. Now, talking to John earlier today, that we have had made 3 applications of mosquito control. So at this point, in between the rain and the weather, so yeah, seems to be doing its trick, according to John. And I don't know if you don't think.
Yes, but
Yeah.
not gnats.
It actually does help on the gnat front, it's not, obviously, it's an abnormal year here going on, so, yeah, be thankful, I guess we are spraying for that matter, and if you don't believe as much, go outside of town, I guess, but anyways, so all good there. I just think John was involved along with other Public Works management staff during Public Works Week, the end of June. You might have seen this we tried to get the word out a little bit at the last minute, but we actually opened up our facilities to the public, but we kind of did that after we made that effort in conjunction with the Tiger Path coordinator at the high school. So we're trying to get some high school kids exposed to opportunities in Public Works, and yeah, so I want to just thank staff, and we actually met with the Tiger Path coordinator earlier today, and as a follow-up, and got some ideas for next year, so we're gonna keep beating the drum on that front. Then lastly, and I think I'll just pop this up on the screen, because I want to make sure council's aware of this on the Highway 15 Main Street front. I think that's all honestly, Melissa, to be on. There we go. And I just received this today from MnDOT District 8 communications person and actually passed it on to council, but this is a postcard that's going to be going out, I believe, on the 21st, and then they're going to send it out through their Facebook addresses. Basically, you can buy Facebook accounts in a certain geographical area, and then, you know, you can advertise your business, or you can send out postcards like this, is what MnDOT's utilizing it for better or worse. No, but they really want to get the word out and get people's attention, and I think to some degree that this will definitely do that. This is a downtown project. I believe this is the sewer from a few years ago, but yeah, it really starts to paint the picture of what's coming, and what they want to do is basically just make people aware of the project from a overall community standpoint, and it's really, you know, protecting MnDOT's interests that we told you this was coming, but they're really doing a great job from a downtown business owner, property owner standpoint, but they want to get the word out to the entire community also. So yeah, this is going to be basically mailed to everybody. It's going to be in a postcard, and then it's going to be posted on Facebook, obviously on their website, and then on the back will just be some general information, nothing you haven't already seen, just describing the project in pretty generic terms, and then providing their contact information. And then it does actually share the official detour now, bringing people around the west side of Hutchinson on County Road 115. So I didn't want there to be any surprises or any of you to get, I tried to get it out to you obviously today, so just wanted to make note of that. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, it's just a really scary picture, especially for a business owner, and
Yes.
but what doesn't get shown is the parking and the access
Yeah.
in the back, and so,
No, you're exactly right. There's a lot of things that play into this in conjunction to what's going on out in front of the stores, what people are trying to do from a parking, you know,
should have had like the
signage.
front and then the back.
Yeah. But, you know, it alludes to the temporary sidewalks,
Well, that'll get people's
Yeah.
attention.
so just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of this, because it
You
is going
drive
to
in there, you
be
ain't getting your car back.
published, broadcast to basically everybody. That's it. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks. Mark, you have anything?
Nothing else tonight?
Steve, let's start with you tonight.
Couple things. I think the pond is really looking nice, and job with the contractors, and any other work going on there now, other than it'll be the connections when eventually here.
Yeah, I think we're just, I think they got the seeding done. If not, the weather, they had just a little bit left. I don't know if John knows if they got it done for certain. I'm not absolutely certain, but seeding should be done in its entirety by the end of the week here. So, yeah, no, we'll hopefully get some decent weather. It is already, I think the scary thing, it is already June 11th, so, you know, things can get dry in a hurry, warm, hot and dry in a hurry, and, you know, that cannot be the best to establish new turf growth. So we'll cross our fingers with the weather. You know, ideally that seed would have been in the ground a month ago, but weather didn't cooperate.
And is the field preparation, is that a part of this project, or is that a separate one?
Yep. Yeah, the basic turf area there on the southerly edge of the.
I think we're putting at least one baseball field.
Well, yeah, with respect to the actual fields, that's not in the project.
That's what I
Yep,
was-
just the restoration of that area, and then it's
Gotcha.
really in, because I think, and maybe Dolphin Parks has a better understanding how they're gonna utilize that area. We were never really certain going into the development of the project. You know,
Sure.
we obviously set it to a certain grade, but
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, they're gonna elect how to utilize it in
Sure.
the end.
Yeah.
So the idea is where it was seeded for that area to then.
Yeah.
There was two-
It was a seed in its entirety.
Yeah.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, because there was at least one or two different concepts. One was kind of two T-ball leagues, and one was one T-ball with kind of a soccer, and so I'm sure.
A neighbor who said they had a nest of mallards and 6 little ones, and, you know, right after they were born, and they're in the pond already, so.
Okay, good deal.
No, they were born? Be you please?
The dog park was by there, and just noticed last year we had a private citizen that provided portable toilet, and this year we don't, and just wondering if we could add something there for the season. And, no, it wasn't budgeted. I talked to Matt, and we had $500.
I think that's what the
number was-
donation, that's what the donation was
And maybe
last year.
sounded like something that could work, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's $500. It's not, I can talk with staff about adding one. We'll just find on that in the future. Like I said, we pick and choose which parks kind of.
I know, Tartan has one by there.
I went by the depot Saturday and that, they were locked and no sign, but we just having some post, a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
And then, lastly, in the South grade, you know, at Lynn Road cutoff, surprised how many people actually use that, and so one, I guess, have we had accidents there, no, or not?
I'm not absolute certain of the accident history. I think it's one of those, MnDOT, we would be back to the drawing board, and I don't know if they ultimately approve they would be very, I think, surprised and displeasured if that really should have went away years ago. And I know a little bit of the history, and I think I alluded to it at some point when we discussed this project, and it's unfortunate it didn't go away when Aspen Dental when the Pizza Hut site was redeveloped into Aspen. You know,
No, people cut through, as I've watched, I see people cutting through from, South Grade to go north on Lynn Road, cut through, which that'll be blocked because there'll be a median, on that part of it extends, so you couldn't make a left into Aspen from.
Oh, yeah.
South Grade, won't be able to,
You won't be able to.
right.
Exactly.
That'll go away.
Yeah.
That's happening now, and you can just see where that's,
Yeah.
probably the opposite will happen.
It's gonna be a very unique, well, like I said, there were discussions held when that was redeveloped, and I don't think it should be any surprise to them, albeit the left will go away, but there is another access point, you know, southbound into that area, onto Lim, that would then enter their site on the east side. So I think they're fortunate in the end, from my perspective, they have 2 access points. Granted, they're not full access points. I realize that. It's just that Lynn Road dynamic, should have been resolved years ago. And if not years ago, it should have been resolved not so many years ago, unfortunately.
Well, and I agree, it looks bad, but, and, you know, I use it, and you watch it, and if there's been no accident history, it seems like, well, is it really a problem right now? So that's why I thought I'd
Yep.
ask. And
I think the only problem you have, Steve, is when someone's in a motorized cart that's handicapped, crossing that street there. Sometimes they're not quite, people aren't seeing them.
across Main Street.
I know one guy got bipped a little bit, but, so, that would be the only downside that I would see with that right now is that part of it, not marked real well.
I've had public safety say they would be happy with that.
Yeah, I hate to differ. Yeah, and obviously Tom's predecessor and I, discussed this early on. I'm,
The other side of the
yeah. So,
Well, and you think of, okay, well, you go off Lynn Road, take that little road, 15,
well,
how that backs up and just see people, well, I'm just gonna cut through. All right, that's all.
Thanks, Steve. Chad?
Well, I don't have anything council-wise, but I could probably give a little water carnival update.
Yeah, I was
Yep.
hoping you were gonna do
Yeah.
that. Let's
So,
hear it.
So Thursday night, they're gonna have, the boat parade and fireworks, so we're having fireworks twice again this year, so thanks to Citizens Bank on that one, that's a big donation. Saturday will be Kitty Day, the run, and, like the Queen's Dance up at the country club. Saturday, or Sunday, obviously the Grand Day Parade, and they'll have fireworks again Sunday night, so, and the coronation, obviously. And Friday night's always the pageant, so,
Is there a boat parade again?
Thursday night.
Thursday night,
Yep.
okay.
Yep,
All right.
yep.
Music afterwards for that.
Yep,
right?
Andy Austin's gonna be down at West River Park, and he puts on a very nice show, so they've had
And-
pretty big crowds down there for
And
that.
that's Thursday?
Thursday night, yep,
Okay. All right.
that's all I had.
Thanks, Chad. Mary?
Well, I don't have anything other than what's happening between 1 o'clock, between 3 o'clock on Sunday and 4:30 Sunday afternoon. Historic Hutch is having, I'm putting in a plug for this. We're having root beer floats, and you will purchase them if you wish, up at the Harrington Merrill House, tours of the house. Martin McLeod is there telling his life story, bringing all his wares. The Hutchinson family is up there singing. So when the parade's over, stop on up to the Harrington Merrill House. That's it.
Speaking of historic Hutch, and maybe it's not directly tied to that, but Depot just seems like it's been rented out more and
It's
more.
busy all the time, you know. And it's a good thing, and it's, the farmer's market is thriving there under their new leadership, and it's just, it's nice, you know.
Thanks, Mary. Dave?
I'm not gonna say a word tonight.
What? Matt?
Two quick items. We had our initial kickoff meeting with the Blandon Group on the leadership program that we were selected for. That's scheduled for the end of February, and this will begin, we'll start the process now of trying to recruit members for that. And then lastly, I had 19 RFPs to our marketing and branding, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna go through 19 RFPs, and so, I don't know if the council wants to look at, I don't know if the full council wants to look at that, or if you wanna do a subcommittee of the council to look at some of those RFPs. I'll say some of them were pretty creative. One of them, they bought a star for us on the constellation, or they named a star after the city of Hutchinson, and they included all their documentation in their material with us. But I was actually quite surprised to find out how many do this quite a bit for municipalities and local governments, whether it's colleges or counties or the state. And so I've started to go through that. I'd like to probably pick a handful to interview, and so I don't know if you want a subcommittee to look at the initial ones. I think there'd be some benefit in the full council looking at maybe if we do interviews with them, but I don't know if there's a benefit in having all 5 of you look at 19. But
Probably will it down to maybe 4 or 5, Matt?
potentially, so, I don't know. I guess I'm looking feedback from you guys on how you want to approach that, so.
be willing to help. Just, you know.
I'd be willing to help also.
Okay.
So.
I think if we had two, and I might even pull in a couple of staff people at least to look at this initial group, and I've got I think I've got digital copies of all, something I can easily share, but yeah, that's it from my standpoint.
Very, thanks, Matt. Kent, is there something when that, with the signal light on, right by the Dairy Queen, Main Street and First? Because when you're going south, or when you're going north, you get a green arrow to
Nobody's
turn,
there.
and there's nobody there. And when you're going south, you sit there forever.
Yes.
And it's backed up to
Yeah.
Highway 7. Is there something there? Is
That's
there?
Why it's getting replaced here.
Yeah, the springtime issue we've been dealing with for years.
Okay.
Yeah, basically it's the wiring of the loop detector shorting out as it's trying to convey its message to the control box, so. Yeah, MinDOT's well aware of it
Okay.
as usual, but yeah, I know it's frustrating, but yeah.
Well,
Unfortunately, sometimes you're at the
I only
mercy
got
of
caught in
technology.
it once, but I've had a few people say, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I saw it. No, it's been doing that for good every spring to some degree for
Okay.
5 years or so.
You can tell that Fifth Avenue was closed because Second Avenue I was surprised how many times today it was backed up.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Past Haslett Street.
Yeah. So, the other thing is, just for the general public, the fountain in Library Square is not a splash pond for your children. Please keep them out of there, because the stuff in there is expensive to replace if they happen to trip over it and break it off. So, this thing, been down there a couple times, and I've seen a lot of kids in there and chase them out, and then they're back in there again, but, so, just, let the public be aware of that. Please keep your children out of there. And, I said it before, I'm not an email person, so if you want to talk to me, please use my cell phone or my business phone to call me. I do not check my emails all the time because I'm out working, so I'm not by my computer. So if you want to convey something to me, please just give me a call. So, alrighty, and that's about it. And enjoy the week. And hopefully the weather will cooperate. Chad, you put an order in already?
Oh, that's the vice commodore's job.
Oh, cool.
After Wednesday should be good.
After Wednesday is, all right. So adjournment's in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.